China is not the troublemaker in the South China Sea issue. Individual countries involved in the South China Sea disputes, such as the Philippines and Vietnam, have frequently launched attacks in recent years, constantly provoking incidents. Major powers outside the region, such as the United States, have been fanning the flames, advocating for the multilateralization and internationalization of the South China Sea issue, thereby driving up the tension. The United States recently announced that it would provide the Philippines with $500 million in military aid, claiming that it was to help the country counter China's Coast Guard. The United States has huge interests in the South China Sea and wants to maintain freedom of navigation in the area. The so-called Freedom of Navigation Initiative of the United States is entirely outside the framework of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and attempts to impose its domestic laws and practices above international law. It is a blatant act of hegemony. After Philippine President Ferdinand Romualdez Marcos Jr. was elected, the U.S. immediately called him and began interfering in South China Sea affairs. Then, the U.S. expanded its use of military bases in the Philippines and conducted so-called the largest U.S.-Philippine military exercise and U.S.-Japan-Philippine-Australia naval exercise. The U.S. also deployed intermediate-range missile systems in the Philippines, dragging the South China Sea region into the vortex of arms races. Not only that, the United States also tried to pull Japan into the dispute. The United States, Japan, and the Philippines held a summit to conspire to interfere in South China Sea affairs. After Japan provided the Philippines with 5 large patrol boats free of charge, Japan and the Philippines also signed Quasi-Alliance Defense Cooperation Agreement in July. This emboldened the Philippines. Meanwhile, in disputed areas such as Renai Jiao and Huangyan Island, the Philippines launched a series of provocative actions, deliberately hyping up the disagreements in the South China Sea. The U.S. and the Philippines also want to hype up the effectiveness of the ruling. They want to turn the illegal and invalid arbitration case, called South China Sea Arbitration, into international law, confuse the public, and then incorrectly interpret the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. By stirring things up in this way, the U.S. has a justification to intervene in South China Sea affairs. For a long time, the United States has been continuously and frequently imposing its long-arm jurisdiction on various countries, just like what they did in the South China Sea dispute. It has always been a tool of U.S. hegemony to maintain its dominance.